Welcome to this week's episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say our guest is Dr. Thomas Juli. He's an author, human business architect, and human being. Dr. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Well, welcome, and thank you for having me.
Nice. It's awesome to have you. And let's start with what you mean by human business architect, and then we can perhaps get a little bit into the human business paradigm of which you've written.
Absolutely. Well, I call myself a human business architect because my interest and my work is I help businesses to become or to be human, or to build in more human elements, in contrast to, say, some mechanic Tayloristic models where people are being treated as human resources, like units. In a human business, we treat people as human beings, and find ways and means to unfold our human potential. And then probably that's one of the main differences, of being just, let's say, management consultant or strategy consultant versus a human business architect.
Right. And for people who are not familiar with the term Tayloristic, what's the contrast you're making there?
Well, Taylor, he said, like, okay, what's important is like that we put the organization, at the forefront, at the core, and being human, or the human beings, are not number one anymore. And it's the foundation of management in the 19th and 20th century, where we designed businesses as if they were machines with input, throughput, feedback loops, output. And I'm not criticizing it per se, because the Tayloristic model served its goal for a very, very long time. I mean, we designed wonderful enterprises. It worked, let's put it this way, for the time being. However, it also assumed people to be, let's say, dumb. You can say dumb, because they didn't really have any education. Well, this has changed, because not only do we have very good schools, some are better than others. We have universities, what have you, and we have the internet. We're better educated. So treating us as stupid, dumb machines or units just doesn't make sense anymore. And that's the old Tayloristic model. And I think it's outdated, especially considering the changes we're experiencing these days.
And you're presenting this new paradigm, the human business paradigm. Yeah, tell us a little about, perhaps about the genesis for that, and then put a bit of flesh on the bone.
Yeah, the genesis. That's a good question. See, I've been working in projects for more than 20 years as a project manager, as a coach, consultant, and my sincere interest was in so-called wow projects. Projects that leave a legacy, were just very important, that generate great value for the customers, delight the customer, the people working in it, just like a wow project. And what I found out is hey, it's not about the product, the technology that makes the difference. It's not about the processes or the framework, the methodology. It's about the people in the team. But nobody talks about it. I mean, when we talk about innovation, we talk about product innovation, process innovation. Nobody talks about people innovation. The fact is, products and processes do not innovate. People do. But so why don't we just talk about people innovation? And so I thought, well, then on the business side, it's pretty much the same thing. Where is the human being? Okay. And, so that idea evolved more and more, having worked as an Agile coach for a very long time, understanding the need and the value of us being human beings. I came up with this, what I call a human business paradigm or manifesto, where I try to summarize the key points of what a human business, why is it so special?
Yeah, and I like that, as it seems to me like your starting point there is language and observing the language we use. And you're quite right. Even as I reflect on it now, even I suppose the more human-centered writings and philosophies that exist still use a lot of language that has nothing to do with humans. Right?
Absolutely, yes. And I'm not sure if that's going to change in the near future, because language is very powerful. But since it's powerful, let's use it properly,
Yeah. And then you have this 10-point manifesto. I mean,
yes.
Maybe take us through the ones that are closest to your heart as a starting point.
Well, there are 10 principles. The first two, they deal with purpose and vision, where I'm saying that a human business is human-centered. So the most important focus is serving, delighting its customers, the workforce, and business and society. So it's like, we say, well, as humans, like, what about the customers? Well, the customer usually are human beings. The workforce, people working for the company, human beings. Business, people working there, it's business, and society. So it's human-centered, it's holistic. And the purpose of human business is then to generate and add sustainable value to its customers, to the workforce, to the business, and to society. So in other words, purpose and vision, that's like the first two principles. Principles 3 and 4 deal with collaboration, where human business promotes diversity in the workforce, and it's, as it is reflected in society. So it's not just like guys, it's like women and men at this, it's a diverse teams. And then human business advocates cross-function and self-organizing teams. And this is very agile, I can say. I mean, so it's nothing really new to those people who have been working in agile environments. So this is dealing with collaboration. So it's not really too new. It's common sense, you can say, but there's a difference between common sense and common practice, as we know. The third pillar, you can say, it's about performance. But we're not machines that perform, but actually human business nurtures joy and happiness in its daily operation. That means, like, when we're joyful, when we do something with happiness, we produce better quality. So and what we practice and nurture is like more like a conscious leadership of enablement and empowerment. It's not like you have a hierarchy, the top knows, the top manager knows best. No, it's about empowerment, it's about enablement. And the joy and happiness is not, it's a driver, it's inside of us. So when you build an environment where joy takes place, where we can live, this joy from within, we perform better.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you've used the term performance. I mean, people don't tend to cluster performance and joy and happiness together.
Yeah.
So explain that a bit. Are you saying that we're replacing the idea of performance with a focus on joy and happiness, or something else?
It's not really replacing. I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's not like when we work, it's not all about like happiness, like have a party and doing yoga and what have you. I mean, we do have to work. We have to perform, after all. I mean, that's what we're being paid for. And we want to produce something in most cases. So we do have to talk about performance, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's basically that we're using our skills and our potential for something better. So it's like, this is like what we're here for. I mean, it can be a very joyful experience. Does not mean that we're always happy. Okay, you can have like you can have a practice full of joy. That does not mean that you're happy the whole day. There will be times when it's hard work. It will be stressful. That does not mean there is a lack of joy. Joy is like, it's like happiness is like a temporary moment, you can say. Okay, it can fade. Joy is more or less permanent, if we realize that it can be.
Right. But doesn't that set up a bit of a conflict there, right? Because sometimes you might have to sacrifice happiness and joy for performance.
That's a good point. Let's put it this way. A couple of years ago, when I was coaching, actually was leading a team, and we had an agile approach. So in our daily session in the morning, we asked the 3 questions, like, what have we accomplished yesterday? What are we going to accomplish today? And where do we need help? And I added a 4th question, and that was, what will make me happy today? And the people looked at me and like, what do you mean? What makes you happy? It's like, yeah, what makes you happy? Let's talk about it. Anything, or does it relate to work? It's like, what makes you happy? Okay, so people talked about about work. Some people talked about what they plan to do afterwards. And I remember one said she would be very happy if she makes it to the volleyball practice, outside. And we said, like, what does it mean? Well, we start playing at 7 o'clock outside, beach volleyball. It's like, and when would you have to leave? Well, usually it takes 1 hour, so 5 o'clock would be the earliest, but I understand if it's not possible. And then we said, like, no, wait a sec. You want to play beach volleyball? Um, it's your hobby. So why don't we do this? You leave at 5. We make it possible that you leave at 5. If there's anything that we still have to finish, we'll take care of it, or you do it afterwards. But you go play volleyball. And she was so excited the whole day because she thought, like, oh, I don't have to worry whether or not I can make it. And she was like thrilled and didn't have an impact on her performance, not only on her individual performance, the whole team. And another example was like a colleague of mine said, like, he would be very happy if a workshop goes well. And I said, like, Hartmut, that was my happy. But you know what? I will be happy if I can make you happy. And so it went, and then for a week, we forgot the happy question. And the atmosphere and the team and the performance went down. You can tell the difference. It was 2 years ago, I changed this happy question or modified it a little bit and asked, okay, what are you grateful for today? It could be anything. And people say, like, okay, that's a wonderful question. Can I still answer the happy question? Okay. And so they did. And the whole atmosphere was much lighter. And actually, they started the daily with this question. It didn't extend the 50 minutes, but they focused on what mattered most to them at that moment. And it created something like a framework for performance. And we realized, if you want to build synergy, you have to acknowledge our limitations as well as our potential, and not as machines, but again, as human beings. And happiness and joy, very, very human, very individual. There's no definition. So what makes you happy today, or, what you're grateful for, could be anything.
And I like the idea of that being a daily practice, right? Because what makes me happy today isn't the same as what's going to make me happy tomorrow.
Yeah.
And creating it as a habit by having it something daily means it's more likely to stick and emerge, right, over as a facet of the culture over time.
There's one thing you can add. We captured every happy note on Post-its. So we had a happiness wall or joy wall. And after 2 weeks or so, you get like a sense, what kind of environment do we need to build a high-performing culture? Okay. And it sometimes I had to do something with the logistics or something else, but it gives you also, like, for lessons learned, how you want to build, a happy project. Happy people, they perform better, the quality is better. If you're burned out, if you're tired, software developers, software developers, they produce crap code. Why don't you want to do it right in the first place?
I love that, a happy wall. And I love how that's completely bottom up. So it's not like you're trying to work out what a happiness framework is, right?
No.
You're just building it from this question getting answered every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it reminds me of something, another guest, and she had as part of their business practice, when they bring people into the company and then on a regular basis, they have these dream consultations.
Yeah.
And that isn't some Jungian analysis thing. That's the manager asking the person, what's your dream? What dream do you have? And this is in their lives, not at work. This is in their lives. And then part of the role of the company is to have that individual's dream happen. And they've ended up creating a joint partnership with a safari company in Africa to have this person's dream of spending a year on safari fulfilled. They worked with one of their clients who was a travel agent to have this guy have the whole family go out to watch the World Cup in Australia. So all of these things emerged in the culture from that simple question of, what's your dream? So yeah, very powerful. Yeah. I can see. Okay, so that's performance.
Well, there are two more. I mean, there's learning and results. I mean, with respect to learning, human business, we want to have like an open and learning organization, and where you actually celebrate failure. I mean, if you want to be innovative and you're afraid of making mistakes, you're in the wrong business. You just have to find, okay, what kind of setup do we need to so we can, continuously find ways and means to improve our performance, do something different. And we share our findings with other people. So it's open. It's more like an open innovation environment. So learning is very, very important. And not just learning, and mechanical learning can be what I call generative learning. And generative learning has to do something with playing. Like as kids, we unlearn to play.
Yeah.
But we learn the most when we play. So, hey, let's do something crazy sometimes, like, and find different ways to ask funny questions or stupid questions. Well, people, some of them at least, I think, are stupid questions. And enjoy the learning experience or making mistakes, where we say never make a mistake more than twice, so you can learn from it. And it's like when you invite mistakes early, especially in Agile, then it's wonderful, because then the quality later on would be much better. Yeah. With respect to results, everything, all purpose, vision, collaboration, performance, learning, everything is wonderful. At the end of the day, we have to deliver. So results are very important. And there has to be, however, like a balance between short, mid, and long-term results or deliverables. If you just have a short-term focus, like EBIT, it will not do the trick. You have to have the long-term vision in your mind as well. So that's an art, balancing short, mid, and long-term perspectives. And with respect to profits are very important also in business, but they result from great work. Profit is not a purpose, it's a result. So it's not, human business is purpose-driven, it's not profit-driven. And there's a big difference, okay? Because it's purpose-driven.
People don't have profits. People have purposes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when you have a purpose and you follow through, there will be profit. If you just focus on profit for whom? are you delighting the customer, or who? Where's the added value? If you just focus on the stakeholders and on the shareholders, okay, sooner or later you will be out of business. Even the Business Roundtable in the US, they finally have realized that it's a dead end if they just focus on maximizing shareholder value, not even value, shares. And the other thing is, like on a more global level, you can say, rather than have a linear economy, human business advocates a circular economy, where we keep the resources and use for as long as possible. When we extract the maximum value from the world's in use, and recover, regenerate products and materials at the end of each service life, if possible. And actually, it is possible. We can actually create lots and lots of jobs if we advocate a more circular economy. But that's more on a global level.
But that's worth digging into for people who are not familiar then. So contrast, so what's linear, that to which you're contrasting here, the circular, Connor?
Well, the linear economy is like you produce something, there is waste, and then you just throw it away. Okay, so you have a plastic bottle. What do you do? It's like you drink a bottle of water and then you throw it away. Then it doesn't come back. You can recycle it, but what can you do? Or take like say a computer or an electronic device. It's meant to work for, or it's built to work for, say, two years, if it's 2 years. Okay, and then it will break. It's designed this way. It doesn't have to be this way, because people could design it for ages, but no, they throw it away. And what can you do with it? And it's like, circular economy looks at like, we don't have to do this. We can use and reuse, products, even services, for a much longer time, produce less waste, and we don't have to exploit all the resources we have. So that's the idea behind it. And some people are skeptical. Fact is, who benefits from it most? Us. We can say the planet. Okay, it's not just like planet is like something abstract. It's our immediate environment we live in.
Right, and I suppose the hardcore capitalist might say something like, well, first of all, on the shareholder point, well, if we don't, if we're not in business to maximize shareholder value, then the resources will end up in the wrong hands, right? This is a way to efficiently distribute resources across companies, because the companies who do the best with the resources they'll get more resources, and those who don't spend their capital efficiently will get less resources, and that's a good way to organize a society, because we can use our resources more efficiently.
That's what they claim, but if you look at the numbers, they tell us a different story. I mean, the companies who just have focused on shareholder value, I mean, their performance has deteriorated. Jack Welch, who formerly CEO of General Electric, I mean, he was like one of the advocates of shareholder value, and then he retired. He said, shareholder value, that's the dumbest idea of the world. That's what he's saying now. Because like if he said, if you want to build sustainable business, and if you only focus on shareholder value, I mean, you will be out of business in no time. If you look at Amazon, Jeff Bezos said, like, if I only focus on what the customers would like to have in 2 or 3 years, we'll be out of business. I'm interested in, what will we need, or what kind of demand can we create, for customers in 7 years. So we'll build a foundation. Everyone's smiling at Amazon where they said, oh, we'll do something in the cloud, and say, what kind of cloud? Web services, like there's no future. And they have almost built like a monopoly where NASA is using the Amazon cloud. So looking at having the courage to look ahead, of course, making mistakes. Yeah. But if you only have a short-term focus, it's not going to fly. I'm not saying though, and human business doesn't say short-term focus ever is a bad thing. What human business is saying, you have to balance short, mid, and long-term perspectives. Then that's what is important.
Right. And what about the critics of the circular economy who might say something like, well, hang on, but let's just allow the businesses that do one thing to focus on that business, and where they create waste products or they cause some other disruption in the environment, then other businesses will emerge, and if society wants it, to deal with that part of the process. And isn't that a more efficient way of organizing ourselves?
Well, who's organizing it? The things like, I'm not saying that with a circular economy, I would be very skeptical if somebody said, let's plan it top down. I think it's not going to work in an economy. It's like, well, I'm an economist. I haven't. I'm a trained neoclassical economist, you can say. So I heard the whole spiel, but was very skeptical always on. And it's a good model. Let's put it. It's a model, but reality looks different. Okay. So the question is like, what kind of incentives can we come up with so that the economy can regulate itself? If you people say we have to do top down, we're talking about bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is very slow. It's not very innovative, but you need to have as an incentive. So, for example, you can have your plastic bottle. That's fine, but you have to deposit, say, of $1 or €1. You can still use the plastic bottle, but there's a deposit on it for €1. And then you return it, and then it's up to maybe there will be some new industry that will recycle it. But the point is like, what kind of consumption patterns do we are sustainable? I mean, it's not just plastic bottles, all the wrapping and packaging, etc. With the plastic and the ocean and our food and our water, and it affects us, in a negative way. People don't see it because it's so far away, and when they see it, when they realize it, it's in the backyard. It's too late.
Yeah. And it sounds to me as you're talking is that we're really talking about a different starting point. So if we start from a different set of principles, we can develop our economic theories and our management theories and our, societal theories around how we can organize at that level in a different way. If we start from a different place, all the way back to the language we're beginning with is something like that.
Exactly. Sometimes you think like, say, if you start a new business and you don't have any resource, no money. I mean, it could be a huge disincentive, you can say, disadvantage, or it could be an advantage because we have to be more creative. You have to work with whatever is available. Okay. If everything is being, served to you, then it's luxury, you can say. But if sometimes we become more creative when we see no way out, that's cool. Sometimes it can be. It's like we're talking about climate change, which is a huge problem. I'm not as skeptical as some people are, because I do believe that technology can actually also help us overcome some of the difficulties. But maybe we just have to ask different questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that interests me, and we've talked about this before we go on the show, is you've taken some of these ideas to Davos, and there was I had a little smile. I was like, oh, there's an Agile coach talking at Davos. That seems that seems like something shifted, that's a conversation that's now part of that community. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that for the listeners, how you ended up at Davos and how did that go?
Well, yeah, I have been in Davos already, I think 4 or 5 times, and slowly but steadily building a network. And so last time I actually made it to a panel and the launch of the Female Quotient, which is a wonderful organization, by the way. And we talked about, I think the panel was called The Art of New Business, Body, Mind, and Spirit of Digitalization. Which for some people are like, how does this fit together? I mean, body, mind, and heart, and digital is like, yeah, it's like the human element goes in there. So it's not so much from the Agile perspective, it was more of from the perspective, okay, how can we practice business or view business from a different perspective? How can it be an art again? And bring in the human being. And they asked me about digital, what's my viewpoint about the perspective of the digital economy or digital age in Germany? And I said, like, you know what? I think if I look at the so-called hidden champions, the medium enterprises, they're very well prepared for the digital transformation. Why? I mean, there are some challenges in the technology. That's fine thing, but they're so close to the customer. Okay, they have a very good understanding of the needs of the customers. They care for their employees, and they don't just talk about corporate social responsibility, they practice it. And they know they have to continuously find ways and means to become better and better. And I think, from that perspective, medium enterprise, also because there is less bureaucracy, they're faster, and they're close to the customer, I think they have a very good foundation. The other example I cited was like that, I remember when my kids were younger, and we asked, like, how was the party? And they said, well, that was cool because, like, we turned off our phones and we talked. And I said, like, well, not if more kids, and if we as adults can actually turn off our phones and go spend more time offline, then our kids can be role models. That's pretty cool. So this basically, that was the one aspect I brought to the table. And the other aspect I mentioned, I said, like, in Davos, everybody talked about the wonderful opportunities that digitalization brings. And I said, like, you know what? Nobody talks about the fear factor. People are actually afraid of change. They're afraid of the VUCA world, and nobody talks about it. If we want to change anything, we have to listen. We have to take the fears seriously, and we have to find new ways of orientation. And actually, we have to focus more on, we should not ask the question, what will the future look like? We should ask, how do we want to live in the future? That was the debate. And there was some it was a very interesting discussion, yes.
And so do you think, I'm just passing that through then. So the basis there is, the world is becoming more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous. And as human being, I fear that. And if that's true, then it's useful for me to ask different questions about the future, less about how it will be and more about how I will respond to. Is it something like that?
Let's face it. We have always lived in a VUCA world. It has always been this way. Maybe we haven't seen it as such. And we as human beings, we are VUCA. We're complex. We're not machines, and that's life. That's the first step. Then we have learned, we have lots of skills, we know a lot, and yet we don't trust ourselves, which is kind of like weird. I mean, we trust machines more than we trust us. There is something quite wrong. I mean, do we have to be a scientist to understand climate change? No, I don't. I mean, we start with us, but the question is, like, do we take the time to pause and say, okay, what do I want? If I say, what do I want, I have to answer the question, who am I? Which is tough. And then the question is, like, are we talking about a role, or are we talking about who am I really? I mean, people say, well, there's philosophy. Well, okay, fine. Maybe for some people it's philosophy, but it's very basic. I recall I had this conversation with the older couple in Davos, and I asked the question, what do you think about the digital stuff and digital age? And they say they were afraid. It just goes too fast. And I did ask the questions like, okay, well, do you have an idea how you want to live in the future? And they said, well, of course we do. I mean, we live a wonderful life. I mean, we enjoy nature, and we know, and they just list everything. And said, what about technology? Oh yeah, technology is pretty cool because it facilitates the process. And then I asked, well, the first question was like, what will the future look like? How would you answer it now? Well, you asked a different question, they said. Okay, you asked how we want to live. And that was our answer. And I said, like, well, since you do know how you want to live, you can be a role model, because help people, also younger people, ask this question, because then I think we'll be better off. So by reframing the simple question, we can actually start the change, for us. How do we want to live?
As opposed to what will
the future look like? If we ask what will the future look like, we're passive. We become victims. We react. When we say how do we want to live, we're active. It puts us back in the driver's seat.
Right, and you mentioned that in one of your posts, the defensive nature of planning, right?
Yes. Planning is like, whenever we plan, we use the knowledge of the past and the present. But can we plan innovation? No. I mean, if we plan innovation, then it's not innovation anymore. I mean, we can plan an environment where new ideas can, be created, and we develop something new. But can it be planned? It's contradiction in definition. You cannot really plan invention. I mean, then it's not an invention anymore if you can't plan it. I mean, but like I said, what kind of environment do we need to learn best? What we can learn from kids is they have a wonderful learning attitude, we can say. And there are some statistics from Pampers, diapers. 300. And 300 is not the name of the movie. It's 300 is the average time a kid that is learning to walk, taking the first step, falls. So it falls down 300 times on average before he or she takes the first step. Wow. And the cool thing, what we can learn from the kid is they don't sit there, cry, and point the finger at us and say, it's your fault. I mean, they cannot speak anyway. They just try it again and again until they succeed. So it's like, you learn from it, you try something new again, and we'll see. Everybody talks about the wonderful innovations. What about the failures? Nobody sees. Take the iPhone, for example. Take Astro Teller, who works for Google X, and in a TED Talk, he talks about it, where they celebrate failure. You get a bonus if you ask a question which can cripple a project. So they find ways, find questions that can stop a project. Not the but, like it's restrictive, looking back, but forward. What could happen? And okay, then let's do something different. And they're very innovative. So it has to do a lot with our attitude. And I think when we change this attitude, our perspective, we will get lots of new ideas, lots of answers to our questions, and lots of solutions to our problems. We just have to start this process.
But okay, so in that world, then where's the space for wisdom? So where's the space for, well, I have had lots of experience.
Oh, that's good.
And that does give me some predictive power.
Yeah, well, absolutely. First of all, we have to understand where we're coming from. We have to understand, when we want to understand life, we look backwards, and maybe the present. But if we want to shape the future, we have to live now. Okay, we can use the wisdom. It's a tool. Okay. But wisdom is not, if we want to create and when we want to shape the future, we have to do so by doing. It's not a thing. It's not like a book. Okay? It can help us, but wisdom is something we take with us, but it should not hold us back.
Right. And you're suggesting a reorientation.
It's a reorientation. It's a different.
What do I want? What could happen?
Different perception, different strategy, we can say. And it's very, it has to do something going back. I think it's not new. It's not new. I think when we were little, we had this attitude. we had this mentality when we were little kids, when we had not entered school yet. Because once we enter school, we're being structured. It's the mind. And we use the one brain rather than the other two brains. We unlearn to use the other two brains. But we have the intuition, the butt, and the heart, and the heart being the bigger organ. We unlearn this. Why? Because it has always worked this way. And it's not everything is bad, but we have to understand that it's not the whole thing. I know that in the UK, in elementary schools, they have new classes in mindfulness, meditation, with wonderful results. With better social interactions. They learn better and they're more open. I mean, if you look at this, it's actually scientific proof that can tell a story.
And do you see the link there that the mindfulness has people more in the present, better able to process their feels? Where do you see the link there?
Yes, I think that mindfulness can help us be more present. And the one thing I have to say, I'm not, even though I'm saying this, that does not mean I'm a master of mindfulness. I'm not. I'm struggling with this. There are quite a few, where I have worries, I have concerns, I have fears and stuff. I love planning, and all those things, rather than just like say, stop, just be in the moment, okay? Because if I have so many thoughts going on in my mind, I miss life.
Yeah,
and the things like when we are in the present, and can we be in the present and at work the whole time? I don't think so. But when we create the time to be present, let's say at work or at home, we actually create even more time. We have something like more space for creativity. Okay. And so this 1 minute feels like 10 minutes, and it can be worth 10 minutes. And we start 1 minute at a time and see what happens.
Yeah. It reminds me of the guy who's written Homo Sapiens. Harari.
Yeah.
That guy meditates 2 hours a day. Seems pretty productive. Pretty productive dude.
Well, sometimes you wouldn't have to meditate for 2 hours each day. And meditation, some people are afraid of it. Meditation can take many forms. That's my experience. If you're outside and you just, for a few seconds, okay, you listen to the birds, or you feel the wind, or you listen to your heartbeat for a few seconds, you can consider this, a meditation. You don't have to sit on a cushion and, in a lotus position and chant arms. You don't have to do this. Meditation can take many forms. When I ski, it's a form of meditation for me, because why? I'm in the present. If you look at spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle, he'd say, well, sometimes he meditates, but it's more of being in the present moment. Okay?
Yeah, and the other thing I think the skiing metaphor works is I remember when I first started getting skiing lessons, and the instructor, our natural instinct when we go down the hill, when we're skiing, is to rock back in our boots.
Yes.
And his instruction was, no, Rich, you need to lean forward, and you need to fall forward down the hill, and that will give you more control. And it seems like that's an apt metaphor, because what you're saying is, no, fall forward into the uncertainty.
Yes.
Be aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, actually, for those who don't ski, but if you have ever been on a roller coaster, and they are human, it's scary when like, oh my gosh. But in the opposite, if you say, yeah, go for it, I want to go for it, it's less scarier. It's like, it's not so it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's like, it's less scary. You just like go for it and you enjoy it much more. So yeah, we can trick our brain a little bit this way. But it's a normal thing, an instinct to move back, but actually being in the present, moving forward, being aware of what's happening all around us, it's a wider, it's more open space for learning.
That's right. And I think, as you say this, and then I'm questioning, so why this shift now? Why are these themes becoming so important now? And perhaps it's because in the past, in terms of the business environment, actually taking a more defensive stance may have been a more successful strategy for businesses, right? to capture some ground, to create some assets, and then to defend them may have been a more successful strategy.
That's a good point. Because see, people say, well, we're talking about agile. I mean, does a business have to be agile to be successful? I'd say, well, there is no real alternative. I mean, if you want to delight the customer, but I think that you don't have to be an agile organization through and through. You can still be a human organization, because there are some elements of these 10 principles you can apply day one. You can apply them right away. I mean, you start somewhere. I mean, do you have to do everything top down? It's helpful that if the top leaders, top managers, they believe in it and they also practice it. But rather than doing something top down because there's some resistance to change, start with a project, with a small project, where and where there's not so much at stake, and see how it works out. That's why I'm a fan of projects. You do it bottom up and see how it works, like a microcosm of a business.
Right. And in your experience, do you have some shares of where you've started somewhere small and it's taken off with a client or within a business you've worked on?
Well, quite a few times it happened, and I was with a client in the automobile industry where we had something like we call it a swarm, a cross-functional team, self-organizing team, and we started with a question, and they had some ideas mechanically and processes, and I provoked them a little bit and asked them different questions, and it used various methodologies, frameworks, and Blue Ocean, Scrum, a lot, business model generation. I mean, it was like a mixture, and by the end, a couple of weeks later, we realized the initial solution, not just the initial solution, the trigger question was false. And that's tricky. When you realize the initial question that triggered the project is totally misleading. Luckily, the ideas for the solution we had could still not only solve the initial problem, but could do much more. It was like a systemic approach, and that was pretty cool. That was wonderful. And in an environment, another project where we had people from production, product development. They happened to be on the same floor with strategy and sales. So we just did a joint workshop, and the sales guy said, like, why are you asking these questions? They're asking the strategy guys and the production and product development guys, and vice versa. And they realized they have lived on different planets. And they said, why don't we just do something together? So rather than building a new powertrain, they developed a new mobility strategy, where the powertrain was only one element in it. Just reframe the question, open the space and see what happened. The other thing is what I asked earlier when we had this fourth question, what makes you happy?
Yeah, I was thinking of that still from earlier, yeah.
In one team, I introduced this question. It's like, well, you can do whatever you like, okay? 2 weeks later, I came, and actually the fourth question, what makes you happy? They started it with that question. And not only the morning meeting, every morning one person had to bring a cake or something from the bakery. That was the first thing they had to do. That was the first work package. Did it change the atmosphere? Yes, I was stunned. That was awesome. And it's just like, it made it more human. Or especially women, and when you have women in teams, one team member said, like, this has been the first time in a project that she felt being accepted as a human being, because she could talk about things that worried her, things that was going on through her mind, and sometimes completely unrelated to work, but people could see her, had a more complete picture of her.
And that was in response to the happy question, because you
happy question or grateful question, and just like they felt being seen, being listened to, and this is like. It's like I said, it can be little things. It can make a huge difference, and we just have to. It doesn't cost anything, and can make a big difference, and it can be fun.
Yeah, and I've just had a big insight there. Is that sometimes when I hear this, okay, well, let's ask ourselves how we can be happy. It can sound very fluffy and kind of like, oh, really? But what you're talking about there, it can get pretty real with people, right? Because in order to sometimes to answer the question, what would make me happy, I first need to answer the question, well, what is not making me happy right now?
Could be.
Right,
yes.
exactly. But as and let's alleviate that. So I can really see that as being a source for getting into issues with the team. That may, as well as the sort of the promoting joy at some level, it's also removing whatever's causing stresses within the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I can see that. That's a good insight. Okay, I know we're nearly out of time with you, and I also know that you've got a book coming up, right?
Well, I'm writing a book.
So we should take
in
this
German.
time to share a little bit about what's happening.
It's called Being Human in a Digital Age.
Oh, great title, gotta say.
And it has been a therapy for me, because I started working on the book. I had some ideas, and as I was writing, I had some new insights. And they're basically the main theme of the book is like, okay, if we're looking for a new orientation in the digital world, we have to find us. We have to become more human. So the first part of the book is about, on the individual level, what can we do to open the human space for us? How can we find us again? And the second part of the book is about, well, how can we apply it in work, in business? So it talks about a project work. It talks about human business. Talks about Agile as a door opener to human business. And so this is the second part, and the conclusion. The third part is about how everything fits together, and how the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated, can be kind of like help the transition from a traditional company or traditional business to a human business. And
the golden rule, just expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, the golden rule is more than thousands and thousands of years old. Like I said, in the Bible, it says treat others as you want to be treated. You go back, I think, 5,000 BC, where the Egyptians, they had something similar. In Buddhism, there's something similar. So it's not like it's a Christian, principle of human interaction. It has been a global phenomenon. And the thing is, like, if you want to, people say, if you want to love thy neighbor like yourself or as yourself, okay, fine. That means you first have to love yourself. Well, that is tough, because do I always love myself? I mean, I'm not talking about egoism or anything. That's something different, okay? That's the ego. I'm not talking about egotism. It's talking about self-love or self-compassion. If I want to practice compassion, I first have to be able to practice self-compassion, and that is tough, and I'm working on it. And I'm actually also sharing my hardship, my experiences. I'm saying, I'm not the expert, far from it, but this is like what helped me. Maybe it can help you as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to really look forward to that when it comes up, and we'll definitely share it with the listeners. And for those who are listening, sometimes you might interview an expert, and there's always this question, are they the real deal, right? Do they walk their talk? But I can absolutely say that you certainly do. In the lead up to this interview, you've been doing a tango marathon. You're going free climbing tomorrow, I think. It seems to me that you have a very rich life, full of happiness. You're making space for your own human needs and wants within business. So it seems to me that you're implementing this in your life.
Well, I'm working on it, and there are always setbacks, and I have to remind myself to stay on course.
Yeah, no,
it's worth it.
Yeah, inspiring to just hear these vignettes of your life. So yeah, excellent. Okay, I know you need to leave, so I want to thank you once again for your time. It's been very stimulating for me. Yeah, I look forward to the book. I hope, and people, for those of you before the book, check Dr. Thomas out on LinkedIn, read your post. There's a lot there. They're very easy to read, very clear. Yes, there's some great stuff out there. And is that the best place for people to point you? Is it social media? Is there anywhere else you'd like to?
Well, yes,
in terms of places
LinkedIn is a good way. You can also go to motivatedtobe.com, which hasn't been updated. That frequently will change in the near future. You can find me on Instagram, Motivate to Be, as well as on Facebook. There is actually a Facebook group called Being Human. And that's one of my small groups where I try to, I should say, I prototype some of the insights I'm also sharing in my book. And there are not many members, but if this is also where I plan to share some of my book chapters before it will be published next year.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks very much. We'll put the links to those in the description for the show.
Thank you.
And I think you're off to a tango. Is that right?
Tonight I'm just, it's a regular tango milonga tonight, and tomorrow I'm doing some free climbing.
Excellent. All right. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.